Psychological tests are powerful tools. They offer a window into the complexities of human behavior, cognition, and emotion. These tests provide standardized measures that help us understand individual differences. They are used in a variety of settings, from schools and clinics to workplaces and research labs. Developing a reliable and valid psychological test is a rigorous process. It requires careful planning, meticulous execution, and a deep understanding of psychometric principles. Creating a psychological test begins with a fundamental question: what do we want to measure? This question drives the entire test development process. It shapes the selection of test items, the format of the test, and the interpretation of the results. Whether we aim to assess personality traits, cognitive abilities, or emotional states, a clear purpose is paramount. Before embarking on item writing, we must identify our target population. Who will be taking this test? The age, cultural background, language proficiency, and educational level of the test takers will influence the design and content of the test. For instance, a test designed for children will differ significantly from one intended for adults. A well-defined purpose and target audience provide the essential foundation for developing a psychological test that is both meaningful and impactful. These initial considerations shape the entire test development process and ensure that the resulting instrument is appropriate and effective for its intended use. Defining the purpose of the test is paramount. We must ask, what psychological construct are we aiming to measure? Is it intelligence, personality, aptitude, or something else? Clarity of purpose guides the entire test development process. It dictates the type of questions we ask, the format we choose, and the way we interpret the results. Equally important is identifying the target audience. Who will be taking this test? Understanding the demographics and characteristics of the test takers is crucial. Factors like age, cultural background, language proficiency, and educational level all play a role. For example, a test designed for children might use simpler language and more engaging visuals than a test designed for adults. A test intended for a multicultural population needs to be sensitive to cultural differences. This ensures that the test items are relevant and understandable to the individuals taking it. Once we have a clear understanding of the test's purpose and target audience, we can move on to the next crucial phase: developing the test items. The heart of any psychological test lies in its test items. These are the questions, tasks, or statements that aim to elicit responses indicative of the psychological construct being measured. Creating effective test items is both an art and a science. It requires a deep understanding of the construct, creativity in designing engaging tasks, and a keen eye for potential biases. Content validity is paramount. This means ensuring that the test items are relevant and representative of the construct being measured. For example, a test measuring verbal intelligence should include items that assess vocabulary, reading comprehension, and verbal reasoning. The items should cover a wide range of difficulty levels to discriminate between individuals with varying levels of the construct. Item writing also demands careful consideration of wording and format. Items should be clear, concise, and unambiguous. Avoid using jargon, technical terms, or culturally specific language that might confuse test takers. The goal is to create items that are accessible and easily understood by the target population, minimizing the risk of misinterpretation. The format of test items and the response options provided play a crucial role in shaping the quality of data collected. Different formats lend themselves to different types of constructs and target populations. For example, multiple-choice questions are well suited for assessing knowledge or recognizing patterns. Open-ended questions, on the other hand, allow for more nuanced and individualized responses, often revealing deeper insights into thoughts and feelings. The choice of response options is equally important. For closed-ended questions, the options should be exhaustive, mutually exclusive, and logically ordered. For rating scales, the number of points on the scale and the labels used can influence responses. A 5-point scale might be sufficient for some constructs, while others might require a 7-point or even a 9-point scale to capture the full range of responses. Careful consideration of item format and response options ensures that the test is engaging, easy to understand, and yields reliable and meaningful data. The goal is to create a testing experience that feels natural and intuitive for the test taker, while providing valuable insights for the researcher or practitioner. Section 5. Establishing a scoring system and interpretation. Once we have developed our test items, we need a system for scoring and interpreting the responses. This involves assigning numerical values to different responses and establishing a clear rubric for what those scores mean. The scoring system should be objective and consistent, ensuring that all individuals taking the test are evaluated fairly. For some tests, scoring might be straightforward, such as summing up the number of correct answers on a multiple-choice exam. For other tests, especially those involving subjective responses, a more nuanced scoring system might be necessary. This could involve using rating scales, rubrics, or even expert judgment to assign scores to responses. Interpreting test scores requires establishing norms. Norms are statistical data that tell us the average performance of a particular group on the test. By comparing an individual's score to the norms, we can determine how they performed relative to others in the same age range, gender, or other relevant demographic group. This contextualization is essential for making sense of test results. A well-defined scoring system and clear interpretive guidelines ensure that test results are meaningful and actionable. They provide a framework for understanding individual differences and making informed decisions based on the data collected. Section 6. The crucible of pilot testing, feedback and refinement. Developing a psychological test is an iterative process. Once we have a draft version of the test, it's time to put it to the test, literally. Pilot testing involves administering the test to a small sample of individuals from the target population. This crucial step allows us to gather feedback, identify potential problems, and refine the test before wider distribution. During pilot testing, we collect data not only on test performance, but also on the testing experience itself. We want to know how long it takes individuals to complete the test, whether they find the instructions clear, and if any items are confusing or offensive. This feedback is invaluable for identifying areas for improvement. Pilot testing often involves collecting qualitative data as well. We might ask test takers to share their thoughts and feelings about the test, provide examples of their responses, or suggest ways to improve specific items. This feedback helps us understand the cognitive processes involved in taking the test and identify any unforeseen biases or ambiguities in the items. The insights gained from pilot testing are essential for refining the test and ensuring that it is valid, reliable, and user-friendly. It allows us to identify and address any issues before the test is administered to a larger population, ultimately strengthening the quality and impact of the instrument. Section 7. Item analysis, ensuring quality and relevance. After pilot testing, we delve into the data to evaluate the performance of individual test items. This process, known as item analysis, helps us identify items that are too easy or too difficult, as well as items that do not discriminate well between individuals with different levels of the construct being measured. Item difficulty is typically measured by the percentage of test takers who answer an item correctly. Items that are answered correctly by almost everyone are too easy and do not provide much information. Conversely, items that are answered correctly by very few people are too difficult and may frustrate test takers. The ideal difficulty level for an item depends on the purpose of the test and the intended use of the scores. Item discrimination refers to the ability of an item to differentiate between individuals who score high on the overall test and those who score low. Good test items discriminate well, meaning that people who score high on the test are more likely to answer the item correctly than those who score low on the test. Item analysis helps ensure that the final version of the test includes only high-quality items that effectively measure the construct of interest. Items that do not perform well are either revised or removed, resulting in a more refined and psychometrically sound instrument. Section 8. Standardization, establishing a universal benchmark. Once we have finalized our test items, we need to establish a standard procedure for administering and scoring the test. This process, known as standardization, ensures that everyone taking the test receives the same instructions, has the same amount of time, and is scored using the same criteria. This is essential for making meaningful comparisons between individuals and groups. Standardization involves administering the test to a large, representative sample of individuals from the target population. This sample, known as the standardization sample, provides the baseline data against which all future test scores will be compared. The scores from the standardization sample are used to create norms, which allow us to convert raw scores into percentiles, standard scores, or other standardized metrics. Standardization also involves developing clear and concise instructions for administering the test. These instructions should specify the testing environment, the materials required, the time limits for each section, and the procedures for handling questions or disruptions. The goal is to minimize the impact of extraneous variables on test performance, ensuring that everyone has an equal opportunity to demonstrate their abilities. Section 9. Creating a comprehensive test manual. The final step in developing a psychological test is creating a comprehensive test manual. This manual serves as a guide for anyone who will be administering, scoring, or interpreting the test. It provides detailed information about the test's purpose, development, standardization, administration, scoring, and interpretation. The test manual should include the following sections. Introduction. This section provides an overview of the test, including its purpose, target audience, and theoretical foundations. Test development. This section describes the process of developing the test, including the selection of test items, the pilot testing phase, and the item analysis procedures. Standardization. This section details the standardization process, including the characteristics of the standardization sample and the procedures used to establish norms. Administration. This section provides clear and concise instructions for administering the test, including the testing environment, materials required, time limits, and procedures for handling questions or disruptions. Scoring. This section outlines the scoring procedures for the test, including how to assign points to different responses and how to calculate raw scores. Interpretation. This section provides guidelines for interpreting test scores, including information about norms, percentile ranks, standard scores, and other relevant metrics. A well-written test manual is essential for ensuring that the test is used appropriately and that the results are interpreted correctly. It serves as a valuable resource for researchers, practitioners, and anyone else who uses the test, promoting consistency and accuracy in testing practices.